Hello and welcome, dear viewers, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'd like to talk about 7 very common phrases that many parents use in everyday life without realizing the tremendous damage they can cause to their children's personality. Years later, when those children grow into teenagers and adults, their parents wonder why they lack self-confidence, why they are clumsy, fearful, hesitant, or unable to speak confidently in front of others. The truth is that if parents had simply paid attention to a few small but incredibly important details, their children's future could have been completely different. In this video, I'll briefly explain these 7 harmful phrases, why they're damaging, and what you should say instead. 1. You never understand anything. One of the most common mistakes happens when a mother or father becomes angry or frustrated and casually says to their child, "You never understand anything." Dear parents, this simple sentence is far more destructive than it appears. When you say this, you're not merely telling your child that they made a mistake. You're labeling who they are. You're unconsciously sending the message that they are unintelligent or incapable. Think about it. A child is still discovering the world. They don't yet have experience, maturity, or a clear understanding of themselves. When they repeatedly hear statements like this, they gradually begin to believe them. They start thinking, maybe I'm just not smart. Maybe I'm always making mistakes. Maybe I'm just a clumsy person. Once a child begins to see themselves this way, they'll eventually ask themselves, why should I even try? This is just who I am. Instead of learning from mistakes, they begin accepting failure as part of their identity. But mistakes are a natural part of learning. If your child makes a mistake, and every child certainly will, respond differently. Instead of saying, you made a mistake, or you always make mistakes, try saying, let's look at what happened together. Or say, making mistakes is perfectly normal, my son, my daughter. We all make mistakes. Let's see how we can do it better next time. Or encourage them by saying, why don't you try one more time? I think you'll do even better. Give your child another opportunity instead of attacking their identity. That is the real art of parenting. 2. Look how much better the other children are. Another common phrase is when parents compare their child to others by saying, look how much better the other kids are than you. Many parents think comparison creates motivation or healthy competition. In reality, it does the exact opposite. Comparing children doesn't inspire growth. Instead, it teaches them that they are somehow inadequate, that they are not good enough. This has several harmful consequences. First, you're unintentionally nurturing jealousy. Second, you're damaging your child's self-esteem. Third, you're placing them into an unhealthy competition with someone else. Eventually, they become someone who constantly feels inferior, inadequate, and less valuable than others. Instead of comparing them with another child, compare them with their own past. Say things like, you're doing much better today than yesterday. Or, you've improved so much compared to last year. Help your child recognize their own progress, not someone else's achievements. Point out their talents. Remind them of their strengths. This kind of encouragement builds confidence instead of insecurity. 3. I'm tired of you. Sometimes parents are exhausted. They're stressed, overwhelmed, or simply don't have the patience to listen. Then their son or daughter says something, and the parent responds angrily, I'm so tired of you. Unfortunately, children don't hear this the same way adults intend it. A child interprets it as, I'm a burden. My parents don't want me anymore. All I do is cause problems. Over time, hearing this repeatedly convinces the child that they are not lovable. They begin believing that they are unwanted or even rejected. And what happens next? This belief often develops into chronic anxiety. Some children become excessively dependent on others because they're desperately seeking acceptance. Others withdraw emotionally. They become isolated, quiet, detached. They stop engaging with people because deep down they believe they are simply a burden. Instead, if you're genuinely exhausted, say something like, I'm feeling very tired right now. Give me a little time to rest, and then we'll talk together. Or if a specific behavior upsets you, don't attack your child. Instead say, that behavior made me feel upset. Notice the difference. You're criticizing the behavior, not the child. This distinction is one of the most important principles of healthy parenting. Never confuse a child's identity with their actions. They are two completely different things. 4. Boys don't cry. Another sentence that many parents use, and one that can leave deep emotional scars, is when a child is crying because they're hurt, disappointed, frightened, or emotionally overwhelmed. This happens especially with boys. A father or mother says, "Stop crying, boys don't cry." Dear parents, please don't say this to your sons. This sentence teaches a child that expressing emotions is a sign of weakness. The child begins thinking, "I'm a boy, so I shouldn't cry. I have to keep all my sadness inside. I must hide my feelings. No one should ever see tears on my face." What happens as this child grows older? He becomes someone who struggles to express emotions. He hides his feelings. He bottles everything up inside. Eventually, those suppressed emotions often turn into chronic anxiety, emotional numbness, or sudden outbursts of anger. If your child is crying, don't tell them to stop simply because they're a boy. Instead, say something like, "I know you're upset," or ask, "Would you like to tell me what made you feel this way?" Show empathy. Let your child know that sadness is a normal human emotion. Tell them, "It's okay to feel sad. Everyone feels this way sometimes, boys and girls alike." Helping children understand and express their emotions is one of the greatest gifts you can give them. 5. If you don't do this, I won't love you anymore. This is another extremely harmful statement. Sometimes parents try to control a child's behavior by saying, "If you don't do what I say, I won't love you anymore." Dear mothers and fathers, when you say this, you're making your love conditional. Remember, you're talking to a child whose mind is still developing. A child doesn't understand this as a figure of speech. Instead, they believe, "My parents only love me if I behave a certain way. If I make a mistake, I might lose their love." Can you imagine how frightening that feels? What happens later in life? These children often become adults who are constantly trying to please everyone. They seek approval from others all the time. They struggle to say no. They agree with people even when it's against their own interests. Why? Because deep inside they're terrified of being rejected. They've learned that love must be earned. This often creates an emotionally dependent personality. Instead of threatening your child, say, "I will always love you." Then add, "But I don't agree with this behavior." Notice the difference. Your love remains unconditional. Only the behavior is being corrected. You can also say, "This behavior needs to change, but it doesn't change your value as a person." Or, "I expected better from you because I know what you're capable of." Never make your love dependent on a child's performance or obedience. 6. You're lazy. Another damaging phrase parents often use is, "You're lazy." Dear parents, please don't label your son or daughter this way. This isn't constructive criticism, it's a personality label. Imagine going to a store and seeing a defective product with a large label attached that says, "Defective." That's exactly what happens when you repeatedly tell your child, "You're lazy." You're placing a label on their identity. Unfortunately, some parents make an even bigger mistake. They repeat this label in front of relatives or friends. For example, a mother might say, "Oh, my daughter is just lazy." Or, "You know my son, he's so lazy." Those words stay with your child. They become part of how they see themselves. Don't do that. Never redefine your child's identity. Instead of saying, "You're lazy," say, "You were a little lazy today." See the difference? The first attacks the person, the second describes a temporary behavior. You can also say, "It seems like your motivation was low today," or, "If you make a plan, I know you can do this much better." Encourage them, instill hope, build confidence. Say things like, "I know you can handle this." Your role is to create motivation and positive energy in your child, not to convince them that they are incapable. That makes an enormous difference. 7. You made me upset. The seventh and final harmful phrase is one that many parents use without realizing its long-term consequences. A child does something that disappoints or upsets the parent, and the parent responds by saying, "You made me upset." Dear parents, this may sound harmless, but it can be deeply damaging. Why? Because the child begins to believe that they are responsible for their parents' emotions. In other words, they start thinking, if mom is sad, it's my fault. If dad is angry, it's because of me. Over time, this creates a child who carries an overwhelming sense of guilt. As they grow older, they become someone who constantly worries about upsetting other people. They become afraid to say no. They're afraid to make decisions. They're afraid of disappointing anyone. Their entire life becomes centered around keeping everyone else happy because they've learned that other people's emotions are somehow their responsibility. As adults, these individuals often avoid conflict at any cost. They stay silent when they should speak. They suppress their own needs. They sacrifice themselves simply to prevent others from becoming upset. And this can lead to countless emotional and psychological difficulties later in life. Instead of saying, "You made me upset," try saying, "When this happened, I felt upset." Or, "Let's work together to solve this problem." Notice the difference. You're taking responsibility for your own feelings while inviting your child to participate in finding a solution. Even in moments when your child has made a mistake, it's incredibly important that they continue to feel emotionally safe. That sense of security is one of the greatest gifts a parent can give. Final thoughts. I sincerely hope we can all pay more attention to these issues. A healthy society is built by healthy people. Healthy people are shaped within healthy families. And healthy families are built upon the everyday words and behaviors of parents. Many mothers and fathers sacrifice so much for their children. They work hard. They spend money on the best schools. They provide the best transportation. They buy the best clothes. They prepare the best food. They do everything they can to give their children a better life. Yet sometimes, without realizing it, they repeatedly use a few harmful sentences that quietly undermine everything else they're trying to build. Years later, they wonder why their child has become insecure, why they're overly dependent, why they're timid, why they're socially withdrawn, why they lack confidence, or why they struggle to face life's challenges. The truth is that our children's self-confidence is built or damaged through these seemingly small everyday interactions. Never underestimate the power of your words. A parent's words become a child's inner voice. So choose them carefully. I hope you found this video helpful. Please share your experiences, thoughts, questions, and opinions with us in the comments below. I look forward to seeing you again in future discussions as we continue exploring these important topics together. Thank you so much for liking this video and for sharing our channel with friends and family who may benefit from these conversations. I truly appreciate your support. Take care, and until next time, sincerely, Amir Mehrdad Khosravi.